My name is Gina M. Harvey and I am 36 years old. My entire family ignored me as if I were just an outsider, while my younger brother Ryan received endless praise his whole life. I let it slide, until my grandfather's longevity celebration when he asked where I was living now. I replied, "Just a small condo overlooking Jackson Square." My younger brother Ryan spit out his wine. My father froze like he'd seen a ghost. My uncle just whistled and said, "Oh, oh, oh, well done." That one sentence changed everything in the room. Glasses stopped clinking. Conversations died mid-sentence. Every pair of eyes locked onto me for the first time in 36 years. But let me take you back to how it all started, because the real story isn't about that night. It's about the years of being invisible while Ryan was treated like royalty. From the moment Ryan was born, the spotlight belonged to him. He was the baby who smiled first, the kid who scored every touchdown, the teenager who got accepted to the best college on a full scholarship. Mom would call relatives just to brag about his latest award. Dad framed every trophy in the living room. Even at family dinners, the conversation always circled back to Ryan: what he was doing, what he needed, how proud they were. I was there too, sitting quietly at the table, passing the potatoes, clearing plates, answering questions with short yes or no replies. If someone remembered to ask about me, it was usually Gina's still doing something with houses, right? Then the topic would immediately swing back to Ryan's latest achievement. I didn't fight for attention. I learned early that trying only made me look desperate, so I stayed in the background. I moved out right after high school, took odd jobs, paid my own way through community college, then university. While Ryan was getting new cars and expensive trips as graduation gifts, I was working night shifts and saving every penny. Nobody noticed. Nobody asked. And honestly, I told myself I didn't care. But I did care. Deep down, I cared a lot. I just channeled it into something nobody could take away from me. I threw myself into interior design for high-end clients, the kind who don't post before and after photos on social media because their homes are too private. I learned how to spot $1 million opportunity in a rundown building. I bought my first property quietly, fixed it up, sold it for triple the price, then did it again. And again. Soon, I had a small portfolio of properties across Louisiana. Soon, I had a condo that looked straight down onto Jackson Square in the heart of New Orleans, floor-to-ceiling windows, wrought iron balcony, the kind of place people dream about but can't afford. I never told my family. Why would I? They never asked what I did for a living. They assumed I was still figuring things out. So I let them believe that, until the night of Grandpa Walter's 85th birthday party. The whole family gathered at the old house in the Garden District. Champagne was flowing. Ryan and Ashley were holding court, showing off pictures of their new baby and their renovated kitchen. Mom kept saying how blessed they were. Then Grandpa turned to me, sharp eyes, same as always, and asked the question nobody else had bothered to ask in years. "Gina, where are you living these days?" Before my mom could jump in with some vague answer about somewhere in the city, I looked straight at the table and said it calmly. "Just a small condo overlooking Jackson Square." The room went dead silent. Ryan's wine sprayed across his plate. Dad's fork froze halfway to his mouth. Mom's smile vanished like someone flipped a switch. And just like that, after 36 years of being background noise, I was finally seen. But being seen came with a price I never expected. The calls started the very next day. The "we miss you" texts. The casual mentions of big expenses and just a little help. And I said yes. Because part of me still hoped this time it was real. If you've ever felt like the forgotten one in your own family, stick around. This story gets a lot darker and a lot more satisfying before it ends. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications right now, because you won't want to miss what happened next. Let's continue. After many years living away from home, I finally carved out a path that was entirely mine. I left for college in Baton Rouge with 2 suitcases and a partial scholarship I'd earned on my own. Nobody threw me a going-away party. Nobody offered to help with tuition gaps. I waited tables at night, studied interior design by day, and graduated with honors that no one in my family came to see. Right out of school, I took an assistant job at a small firm in New Orleans, running errands, making coffee, organizing fabric samples for designers who barely noticed me. The pay was low, the hours long, but I soaked up everything. I learned how to read architectural plans, how to source rare materials, how to turn a blank room into something that made wealthy clients stop and stare. Within 2 years, I moved to a better firm downtown. I started handling my own projects, high-end residential renovations for doctors, lawyers, local politicians who wanted discretion above all else. My bosses saw I could manage difficult clients without drama, deliver under budget, and keep my mouth shut about who lived where. Promotions came quietly. First junior designer, then senior, then lead on multi-million-dollar jobs. I never posted photos of the finished homes. My clients didn't want their addresses online, and neither did I. Word spread through private referrals instead. Soon I was flying to Houston, Atlanta, even Miami for consultations. I charged premium rates and saved every extra dollar. That's when I started investing in property. My first buy was a rundown shotgun house in the Bywater neighborhood, cheap because it needed everything. I worked weekends gutting it myself, choosing finishes I knew would sell, then flipped it for double what I paid. The profit went straight into the next deal. A duplex in Mid-City, a small commercial space on Magazine Street. Each one taught me more how to spot undervalued blocks, how to navigate permits, how to time the market. I kept it all off social media. No before and after reels, no bragging about closing dates. My family back home still pictured me scraping by in some cramped apartment, maybe sharing with roommates. Whenever Mom asked what I was up to, I'd say still doing design stuff and change the subject fast. They never pressed for details. By my late 20s, my portfolio had grown enough that I could quit the firm and go independent. I registered a quiet LLC, took only the clients I wanted, and worked from wherever I felt like that month. Some projects kept me in New Orleans, others sent me to Charleston or Palm Beach for weeks at a time. I stayed in nice hotels on client expense accounts, flew business class when the jobs were big enough, and funneled the earnings into more real estate. I bought rental units that cash flowed steadily. I partnered silently with a developer on a boutique condo conversion in the warehouse district. Every deal added another layer of security nobody in my family knew about. Then came the condo on Jackson Square. I'd walked past those historic buildings in the French Quarter for years, admiring the wrought iron balconies and the unbeatable views over the cathedral and the square itself. One day, a top-floor unit came on the market quietly, off-market through a connection, who knew I paid cash and asked no questions. 3 bedrooms, 12-foot ceilings, original hardwood floors, a private terrace looking straight down onto the artists and musicians below. I wrote the check without blinking. Title in my name only. No mortgage, no co-signers, no announcements. I moved in with just enough furniture to make it mine, custom pieces I designed myself, neutral palette, nothing flashy. From my living room, I could watch tourists milling around the square, horse carriages clopping by, jazz bands setting up in the evenings. It felt like the reward for every late night, every risk, every dollar I'd saved instead of spent. I never invited anyone from my family to visit. When Dad once asked where I was staying during a work trip to New Orleans, I said a short-term rental near the office and left it at that. Mom sent the occasional text complaining about their outdated kitchen or Ryan's latest expense, but never once asked to see my place. They assumed I was still the same struggling Gina who left home years ago, reliable for small favors maybe, but nothing more. I let them keep that picture. It was easier than explaining how far I'd come on my own. My bank accounts grew. My credit stayed perfect. My reputation in the industry spread through whispers instead of headlines. Recruiters called with offers to head design divisions at bigger firms, but I turned them down. I liked the freedom. I liked knowing every success was mine alone. No family backing, no handouts, no praise I didn't earn. And for a long time, that was enough. When Grandpa Walter's 85th birthday started approaching, I was in the middle of one of the busiest stretches I'd ever had. My client list had grown to include out-of-state celebrities who wanted second homes in Louisiana, executives building vacation compounds along the Gulf Coast, and even a few restaurateurs opening flagship spots in the French Quarter. I handled every detail, personally sourcing antique mantles from Europe, commissioning local artists for custom installations, negotiating with contractors who knew my reputation for perfection. Word of mouth kept the referrals coming, and I turned down more jobs than I accepted to protect my time. The money flowed in steadily. Invoices in the six figures became normal. I structured my fees with retainers up front and bonuses on completion, so cash was rarely tight. I reinvested most of it immediately. Over the next few years, my real estate holdings expanded beyond anything I'd imagined early on. I picked up a historic townhouse in the Garden District that needed serious restoration, turned it into 3 high-end rental units, and watched the income cover the note twice over. Then came a small warehouse near the river. I converted the upper floors into lofts and leased the ground level to a gallery owner who paid premium for the location. Each property increased my net worth quietly, building equity while throwing off passive income. I diversified too. A beachfront lot in Gulf Shores, Alabama bought sight unseen through a trusted agent. A stake in a boutique hotel renovation in Lafayette. All cash deals, all under separate LLCs, all invisible to anyone who didn't need to know. Travel became part of the routine. A week in New York meeting vendors at the design showrooms in Soho. 10 days in Italy scouting marble quarries and furniture makers for a client's palazzo-style rebuild. A quick trip to Mexico City to study mid-century influences for a modern project back home. I flew first class when the tickets were billable, stayed in suites with views that inspired layouts, and always returned with sketches and samples that set my work apart. I kept my personal life separate. No social media posts from airports, no stories about hotel balconies. My phone's location services stayed off. When friends from the industry asked where I was based, I'd say mostly New Orleans and leave it there. The privacy felt like armor. My family's occasional check-ins stayed surface level. Mom would call around holidays to talk about Ryan's new promotion or Ashley's latest home upgrade, then ask if I was still busy with those decorating jobs. Dad might mention their aging roof or the cost of maintaining the old family house, but never followed up when I stayed vague. Ryan sent group texts with photos of his kids at private school events, always with captions about how blessed they were. I replied with emojis and moved on. They had no idea about the scale of my life. No clue that my tax returns required a full-time accountant, that my investment accounts held 7 figures that I could buy their entire neighborhood if I wanted to. And I never corrected the assumption that I was just getting by. As Grandpa's milestone got closer, the invitations went out, formal cardstock venue booked at a historic restaurant overlooking the Mississippi. Mom called personally to make sure I'd come. "It's been years since we've all been together," she said, voice warm in a way that felt rehearsed. I checked my calendar, moved 2 site visits, and booked a flight from New Orleans to Baton Rouge, then a rental car for the drive to the old family home. I didn't mention I'd be coming from my own place just blocks from the French Quarter. I packed light, a simple black dress for the party, heels I rarely wore, gifts chosen carefully, but not extravagantly. I told myself it would be fine. A quick weekend, polite conversation, back to my routine by Monday. On the drive down, I thought about Grandpa Walter. He'd always been the quiet observer in our family, the one who noticed details others missed. He never played favorites the way my parents did, never compared me to Ryan out loud. His health had slowed him lately, but his mind stayed sharp. I looked forward to seeing him even if the rest of the gathering promised the usual dynamics. I arrived the day before the party, checked into a small hotel under my name, and texted Mom that I was in town. The response came fast: dinner at the house, everyone excited to see me. I took a deep breath, smoothed my expression in the mirror, and headed over. The old routines kicked in immediately. Ryan and Ashley dominated the conversation over grilled steaks, talking about their newest renovation plans and the kids' travel soccer team. Mom hovered, refilling plates, dropping hints about how expensive everything had become. Dad asked Ryan about work, nodded approvingly at every answer. I smiled, passed dishes when needed, answered questions about design projects with just enough detail to satisfy, without revealing anything real. Nobody asked where I was staying. Nobody suggested I spend the night in my old room, and I didn't offer. The next morning, I drove to the venue early to help set up arranging centerpieces I'd had delivered anonymously. Grandpa arrived in a wheelchair, pushed by a nurse, but his eyes lit up when he saw me. He squeezed my hand longer than anyone else's, said I looked well, asked if the city was treating me kindly. I told him it was, and meant it. As guests filed in and the party got underway, I stayed on the edges, refilling drinks, adjusting tables, blending into the background the way I always had. It felt familiar, almost comfortable. Until Grandpa rolled over during cocktail hour, looked around the crowded room, and asked the question that changed everything. After the cocktails were served, the energy in the room shifted into full celebration mode. Grandpa sat at the head table, surrounded by old friends and relatives who hadn't seen each other in years. Toasts started flowing, stories about his time in the service, his years running the family hardware business, how he'd built the house my parents still lived in. Ryan stood up at one point, glass raised high, talking about the values Grandpa had passed down and how they shaped his own success. Everyone clapped, Mom beaming like it was her moment too. Ashley snapped photos, constantly posting them in real time from what I could tell. I stayed busy, circulating, making sure the catering staff had everything they needed, greeting cousins I barely remembered. When someone asked what I'd been up to, I kept answers short: busy with design clients, mostly local renovations. Heads nodded politely, then eyes drifted back to Ryan or the kids running around. It felt like every other family event I'd attended over the years, comfortable in its predictability. Dinner plates came out: shrimp, etouffee, crawfish boils, prime rib carved tableside. The noise level rose with wine and laughter. I sat near Grandpa, helping cut his food, when the nurse stepped away, listening to him reminisce about fishing trips we'd taken when I was little. He asked about my work in more detail than anyone else had, genuinely curious about the kinds of homes I designed. I gave him safe versions, historic restorations, modern updates for young professionals without mentioning the budgets or the clients' names. He nodded approvingly, said it sounded rewarding. As dessert trays circled, bread pudding, king cake bites, chicory coffee poured, strong conversation loosened further. Relatives swapped updates on jobs, grandkids' retirement plans. My Uncle Carl, Dad's younger brother, who'd always been the loud one, started teasing Ryan about his fancy new company truck and whether he'd ever get his hands dirty again. Everyone laughed, Ryan playing along with exaggerated offense. Then Grandpa leaned toward me, voice cutting through the chatter just enough for the nearby tables to hear. Gina, honey, you've been in the city a long time now. Where exactly are you living these days? Mom opened her mouth, probably to supply her usual vague answer about some apartment downtown or something, but I spoke first. Calm, matter of fact, looking straight at Grandpa. Just a small condo overlooking Jackson Square. For a split second, nothing happened. Then everything did. Ryan, mid-sip of his red wine, choked and spit it straight onto his plate in a fine spray. Ashley's eyes went wide as she grabbed napkins. Dad's face drained of color, fork suspended in air like he'd forgotten how to move. Uncle Carl let out a low whistle, leaned back in his chair, and muttered loud enough for half the table. Oh, 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 well done. The hush spread outward in waves. Cousins stopped talking. Aunts turned fully toward me. Even the waitstaff paused mid-pour. Phones lowered. For the first time, I could remember every conversation in my vicinity stopped dead because of something I'd said. Mom recovered first, forcing a laugh that came out too high. Jackson Square. Really, that's quite a spot. Her eyes searched mine, calculating. Dad cleared his throat, managed a, well, that's news, but his voice cracked slightly. Ryan wiped his mouth, staring like he was trying to solve a puzzle that didn't add up. Ashley recovered enough to ask, voice sweet, "How long have you been there? You never mentioned it." I shrugged lightly. "A few years now. It's quiet. Good light for sketching plans." I took a sip of water, letting the moment sit. Grandpa just grinned, patted my hand. "Good for you, kiddo. You earned it." The rest of the evening flipped on its axis. Suddenly, people wanted details: how I'd found the place, what the view was like at sunrise, whether the jazz from the square drifted up at night. Relatives who'd barely acknowledged me earlier pulled chairs closer. Uncle Carl asked about property values in the quarter, hinting he'd always wanted to invest. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in a decade wanted my card for a friend remodeling a condo in the warehouse district. Ryan kept glancing over, expression shifting between confusion and something harder to read. Mom hovered more than usual, refilling my glass before I asked, touching my arm when she spoke. Dad brought up old stories about when I used to draw house plans as a kid, like he'd always seen the potential. Ashley complimented my dress, asked where I shopped. Now said we should do lunch next time I was in town. By the time the cake was cut, 3 tiers, candles blazing, the dynamic had completely reversed. I was the one answering questions, fielding compliments on how I looked so put together. People lingered near my chair instead of Ryan's. When group photos were taken, someone pulled me front and center beside Grandpa. I smiled through it all, polite and warm on the surface. Inside part of me waited for the punchline, for someone to remember I was still the same Gina, who'd always faded into the background. But it didn't come. The attention felt genuine in the moment, almost overwhelming after years of none. As the party wound down, hugs goodbye lasted longer than usual. Mom pressed me to stay the night. Said my old room was ready. I declined gently. Early flight back, client meeting Monday. Ryan offered to drive me to the airport. I thanked him, but said I had the rental. Contact info was exchanged with relatives who'd never asked before, promises to visit soon to catch up properly. Driving back to my condo that night, the city lights reflecting off the river, I felt the shift settle in my chest. For the first time, they'd seen more than the quiet daughter who didn't make waves. They'd seen the life I'd built. And their reactions, shock, turning to admiration, turning to curiosity, told me everything was different now. In the weeks that followed, my phone started lighting up in ways it never had before. Mom called almost daily at first, chatting about little things, the weather, down south, new recipes she'd tried, how Grandpa was doing better after the party. She'd ask about my day, what projects I was working on, even remembered details I'd mentioned in passing. It caught me off guard, but in a good way. After so long with radio silence, unless they needed something small, hearing her voice without an agenda felt like a warm surprise. Ryan texted more too. Photos of the kids at the park, quick memes about home renovations, questions about color schemes for their guest bathroom. Ashley joined in, sending links to furniture sites and asking my opinion as a pro. They invited me to video calls on Sundays, waving the baby at the camera, insisting I had to see how fast he was growing. Dad chimed in less often, but when he did, it was to share articles about real estate trends or ask if I'd looked into certain neighborhoods for investment. The shift wasn't overnight aggression. It built slowly, naturally almost. A month in, Mom mentioned offhand how their old SUV was acting up, transmission issues, mechanic quoting thousands. She laughed it off, said they'd figure it out, but the pause afterward hung there. I offered to help before she finished the sentence. Sent enough to cover a reliable used replacement the next day. She called back, crying happy tears, thanking me over and over, saying I was such a blessing. That felt good. Really good. For the first time, my success seemed to matter to them, not just as background, but as something they appreciated. Ryan's startup idea came up a few weeks later during one of those family calls. He'd been talking for years about launching his own interior staging company, helping realtors prep houses for sale, renting furniture, that kind of thing. Now he had a business plan, a name picked out, even a small office space in mind. The catch was startup costs, inventory, website, marketing. He laid it out casually, like he was just sharing excitement, not asking outright. Ashley jumped in about how perfect it would be with my expertise guiding him. I listened, heart swelling at the thought of collaborating as siblings. I wired seed money the following week, enough for first month rent, basic inventory, a simple site. Ryan sent a video, thank you, eyes shining, promising this would be huge for both of us. Mom gushed about how proud she was of her kids finally working together. The requests kept coming, each one wrapped in affection. Mom started talking about their house on the river, how the dock needed replacing after storm damage, how the kitchen flood from a burst pipe had ruined cabinets. Insurance covered some, but not all. She sent photos of the mess, voice apologetic on the phone, saying they hated to bother me when I was so busy. I covered the difference without hesitation. Contractors got paid, new granite went in, and suddenly I was getting daily updates with progress pics and heart emojis. Ashley called separately one afternoon, sounding stressed. Their minivan, perfect for the kids, was on its last legs. Safety features, outdated, repairs piling up. They'd found a newer model with all the bells and whistles, but the down payment was steep with Ryan's business just starting. She didn't ask directly, just sighed about tough choices. I told her to send the listing. Paid the down payment that night. She texted a string of crying, laughing emojis and voice notes about how I'd made their year. Each time I transferred money, the gratitude poured in. Group chats filled with my name in lights. Mom called me her rock. Dad sent rare texts saying he was proud. Ryan talked about featuring my designs in his staging packages, giving me credit publicly. Invites came for holidays, for weekend visits, for anything really. They included me in Decision's paint colors for their refreshed living room vacation ideas for next summer. I floated on it. After decades of feeling optional, this felt like belonging. Like they finally saw me, not the quiet one in the corner, but the capable daughter who could lift the whole family. I told myself the timing didn't matter. That success had simply opened their eyes to who I'd always been. I wanted to believe the love was real, not tied to what I could provide. The amounts grew, but so did the warmth. Ryan needed another round for marketing, billboards, social ads, targeting local realtors. Mom mentioned hurricane shutters for peace of mind, especially with climate changes. Ashley hinted at private preschool deposits coming due. I said yes every time, tracking less than I should have. The joy of being needed, of being wanted, outweighed any caution. Dinners happened when I visited, everyone gathering, laughing, longer stories flowing freer. My opinions carried weight now. They asked about my condo view during Mardi Gras, wanted tips for their own upgrades. I shared more than usual, careful not to overwhelm, but enjoying the interest. For those first few months, it worked. I felt closer to them than ever. The money left my accounts, but connection filled the space. I convinced myself this was family finally functioning right, support flowing both ways, recognition long overdue. I didn't notice how quickly appreciation turned into comfortable expectation, or how the conversations always circled back to the next need. I was too busy savoring the inclusion. One evening, a few weeks later, my phone rang with a number I hadn't seen in months. Aunt Evelyn's voice came through, steady but careful, like she was choosing each word before letting it out. She'd always been the independent one. Mom's older sister, widowed, early, lived alone in a small cottage up near Baton Rouge. Traveled when she felt like it, never asked for handouts. We'd stayed in touch sporadically over the years, mostly holiday cards and the occasional long catch-up call. She never got involved in family drama, but she noticed everything. "Gina, do you have a minute?" She asked, no small talk up front. I told her I did set my laptop aside on the terrace table and waited. She started slow, saying she'd been at the house for a barbecue the previous weekend, something casual after church, just the immediate family grilling in the backyard. She'd stayed late helping clean up, ended up near the patio doors when everyone thought she'd left. That's when she overheard them. Mom, Dad, Ryan, and Ashley sitting around the fire pit, drinks in hand, voices low, but clear enough. Mom laughing first, saying how nice it was finally having someone in the family who could pick up the tab without complaining. Dad adding that it was about time I contributed after all the years they'd supported me early on. Ryan joking that I'd turned out useful after all, that they should keep the momentum going, maybe float the idea of helping with a bigger warehouse for his inventory soon. Ashley chimed in about how easy it seemed, that I didn't even hesitate anymore. Then Mom again, voice lighter, saying they needed to stay close, keep me feeling involved at least until the major projects were done and Ryan's business was fully off the ground. Ryan laughed hardest at that, said something like, "She actually thinks we're proud now. Let's not rock the boat yet." Aunt Evelyn stayed quiet through it all, slipped out without being noticed. She waited a few days before calling me, not wanting to stir things if it was just drunk talk. But it wasn't. She'd heard enough over the years to know the pattern. She didn't sugarcoat it. Told me straight what she'd heard, repeated the worst lines, almost word for word. Said she was sorry, that she hated being the one to break it, but I deserved to know before it went further. I sat there on the balcony, city sounds drifting up from the square below, phone pressed tight to my ear. The words hit hard at first, a sharp twist in my gut, heat behind my eyes. All those transfers, the late-night wires, the genuine happiness I'd felt at being included. Reduced to jokes around a fire pit. But the real shock didn't last long. Deep down, part of me wasn't surprised. I'd spent a lifetime reading the room, sensing where I stood. The sudden warmth after the party had felt too convenient, too perfectly timed. I'd ignored the nagging voice because I wanted the alternative more. I thanked Aunt Evelyn, voice steady. Told her I appreciated her telling me that it meant a lot, she trusted me with it. She didn't push for reactions, just said to take care of myself, that she was always a phone call away if I needed anything real. We talked a bit about her garden, her latest trip to the coast, then hung up. That night, I didn't sleep much. Walked the condo floors, stared out at the cathedral lights, replayed conversations in my head. The gratitude texts, the family calls, the way needs always surfaced right after compliments. It fit too neatly. Anger came in waves, then faded into something colder. Not rage, clarity. I wasn't going to confront them right away. Yelling or accusing would only give them room to deny, to twist it into misunderstanding or jokes taken wrong. I wanted facts, not drama, so I decided to test it. Quietly. No announcements, no explanations. I'd stay engaged. Answer calls, send birthday messages, act like nothing changed. But the next time money came up, I'd pause. See how long the warmth lasted without fuel. See what they noticed, first me, or the missing transfers. The plan felt simple, almost cold-blooded. But after everything, it felt fair. I'd given freely because I hoped for real connection. Now I'd see what was left when the giving stopped. I went to bed calmer than expected. The hurt was there, dull but manageable. What replaced it was resolve. I'd built my life without their approval once. I could protect it now. As things grew quieter, I kept my routine exactly the same on the surface. I answered texts, promptly liked photos of the kids, joined group calls when invited. The tone stayed friendly, light check-ins, shared memes, quick updates about work. But when the next hint surfaced, I let it pass without offering. Mom sent pictures of patio furniture she'd been eyeing, mentioning how nice it would be for summer gatherings now that the dock was fixed. The message ended with a casual, "Prices are crazy these days." I replied that the set looked great, asked about her weekend plans, and left it there. No transfer followed. She didn't bring it up again right away. Ryan posted about needing new software for his staging business, tagged me in a story about design tools on sale. I commented with a thumbs up and a note about features I liked. Nothing more. Ashley mentioned preschool tuition increases in a voice note, voice tired but hopeful. I sympathized, said kids grow too fast, changed the subject to a recipe she'd shared before. The shift started subtle. Replies came slower. Group chats that used to buzz daily went hours without new messages. Mom's calls dropped to once a week, conversations shorter, affection thinner. Dad stopped sending articles altogether. Ryan's texts turned to complaints about slow month suppliers raising rates, how tough it was staying afloat without a buffer. Hints grew more pointed but never direct asks. Mom forwarded listings for a generator storm season coming, better safe than sorry. Ryan talked about expanding inventory but cash flow being tight after unexpected fees. Ashley shared screenshots of vacation rentals saying family time would be good for everyone if only they could swing it. I stayed warm, interested, available. Asked follow-ups, offered non-financial advice when it fit. Suggested budget apps, local vendors with deals, ways to cut costs. The responses cooled further. Enthusiasm faded. Excuses appeared for skipped calls, busy with the kids, early mornings, tired evenings. It confirmed everything Aunt Evelyn had warned me about. They didn't check if I was okay, if projects were stressing me, if the city was lonely sometimes. The absence they noticed wasn't mine, it was the money's. Months in, a message from an old client pinged my inbox out of the blue. A restaurateur I'd worked with years ago asking if I'd heard about a new firm pitching him for a chain rollout. Said they'd name-dropped me as lead designer, sent a portfolio that looked suspiciously familiar. He attached the proposal PDF, wondering if it was a partnership I'd joined. I opened it from my office desk, heart rate picking up before I even scrolled. The company name, Harvey Design Collective, registered to Ryan and Dad's addresses. Slick logo, professional layout, promises of exclusive access to elite talent. Then the portfolio section, photos of my project's layouts. I'd created client testimonials cropped to remove my name. My condo renovation featured as their signature style. A hotel lobby I'd done in Baton Rouge listed as a recent completion under their banner. They'd built an entire site around it. Testimonials fabricated or lifted. Bios claiming years of collaboration with top professionals, implying me without saying it outright. Contact forms routing to emails I didn't recognize. They were marketing to my network, my past clients positioning themselves as the gatekeepers to my work. I dug deeper that afternoon. Public records showed the LLC filed 6 months earlier, officers listed as Ryan and Dad. Social pages, already active, posts about upcoming projects using rendered images, lifted from my private files, how I didn't know yet. Inquiries rolling in from people who thought they were hiring through me. The realization settled heavy, but not surprising. They'd moved past asking. Now they were taking my reputation, my portfolio, my relationships, turning my silent success into their public brand without permission. I closed the laptop, walked to the balcony, watched tourists milling in the square far below. The betrayal stung sharper this time, calculated in a way the hints never were. But it also clarified the line. This wasn't family support gone sideways. This was theft. Evidence gathered quietly. Screenshots, domain records, saved emails. I forwarded everything to my lawyer the next morning, instructions clear. Stop it fast, no public mess if possible. Cease and desist drafted by end of week. They'd crossed from expectation into territory I wouldn't ignore. After everything wrapped up, the response came faster than I expected. My lawyer sent the cease and desist the same week, formal letter citing trademark infringement, unauthorized use of intellectual property, false advertising. Copies went to Ryan Dad and the registered agent for their LLC. The demands were straightforward: take down the website, remove all references to my work, dissolve the company immediately, or face lawsuit. Ryan called within hours. Voice panicked, asking what was going on, claiming it was all a misunderstanding. Dad followed up the next day, calmer but defensive, saying they'd only wanted to build something for the family, that including my projects was meant as a tribute. I let the lawyer handle replies. No emotion, no explanations from me. The site disappeared overnight. Social pages went private, then deleted. Domain records updated to show dissolution. A couple of potential clients who'd inquired reached out confused. I clarified quietly that I had no affiliation, referred them elsewhere if it fit. Damage stayed minimal, mostly to their credibility. Once it was done, I made the cut clean. Blocked numbers across platforms. Changed my phone entirely, forwarded only essential contacts. Emails filtered to trash anything from their addresses. No dramatic announcements, no final messages. Just silence on my end. They tried at first. Texts from new numbers asking to talk. Voicemails about misunderstanding, about family sticking together. Mom left one tearful saying they were sorry if feelings got hurt. I didn't respond. The attempts faded after a month. A year passed like that. No overlap needed. Work stayed strong. I took on selective projects, mentored a couple of younger designers over coffee, traveled when inspiration called. The condo felt more like home than ever. Bookshelves filled, art on walls chosen for me, not show. I adopted a rescue dog from the local shelter, a scruffy mixed breed with one floppy ear and a skeptical stare. Named him Jax after the square he could see from the terrace. He turned out loyal, funny, always ready for walks along the river. Simple routines grounded me. Aunt Evelyn visited more often. We'd cook together, sit on the balcony talking about everything and nothing, her latest book club drama, my recent trips to fabric markets abroad. She never pushed for reconciliation, just offered steady company that asked for nothing back. Then one afternoon, a message came from cousin Travis' dad's side, someone I hadn't spoken to since the party. He said he wasn't reaching out for anything, just thought I should know how things stood. Ryan's staging business had folded months ago. Clients dried up after word spread about the fake firm suppliers demanded cash upfront he couldn't cover. He'd taken a regular sales job at a big box store, hours-long pay average. Mom and Dad were struggling with bills. Credit cards maxed from the house upgrades. Retirement accounts dipped into earlier than planned. They'd downsized vacations, sold the river dock accessories. Ashley had gone back to part-time work. No big crises, just the slow grind of living beyond means catching up. Travis said my name came up, sometimes regret in quieter moments, but mostly deflection. Aunt Evelyn still spoke up when versions got rewritten, kept the truth plain. No one asked him to intervene. I read it once, replied thanks for the update, wished him well. Didn't reach back to anyone else. Looking back now, the silence doesn't feel empty. It feels like space room for my own choices, my own peace. I learned what conditional love looks like, up-close warmth that arrives with success and vanishes without money attached. They taught me the difference between being valued and being used, between family ties that strengthen and ones that extract. Walking away wasn't loss. It was reclaiming what was always mine, my time, my worth, my future. Some relationships aren't meant to be fixed. They're meant to teach you when to stop trying. And sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is choose yourself fully without apology. These days, Jack snores at my feet while I sketch new plans. Aunt Evelyn calls to share a recipe. The square below keeps its rhythm, music rising, crowds shifting, life moving on. I'm exactly where I need to be.